Hey YouTube, what's going on? Abyssalwave here, and welcome to episode 3 of the Insane DPS series for Tomb of Sargeras, and we are on Harjatan Mythic. So for Harjatan, I did run, of course, Unholy, but I ran the regular Dark Arbiter build. The reason I'm not running the Defile build for this is because I don't have the helmet. However, I do have Soul the Deathlord, so you can get away with running the Defile build, even with just, I guess, Kill Jaden's and any other legendary. And if you have Soul the Deathlord, it's definitely a good idea to try that build. However, we have pretty crazy AoE with a Boomkin, as you can see from the meters down there. And we normally have a Fury Warrior dealing a ton of damage, so I just ran, the Dark Arbiter builds. But it is still possible to do a decent amount of AoE with it, so without further ado, let's get into it and start now. So of course, I'm going to pop my army at around 7 to 8 seconds. I usually do about 7 seconds. So I have my runes up, and I go over this every time. But for those of you who this is the first episode you're watching in this series, I use my army at 7, and then I go through my normal opener, which if you don't know the normal opener, then I recommend you go watch my Dark Arbiter guide, which I'll put down in the description below so you can easily reference that. However, right now I'm stacking up wounds because once the ads are up, I'm going to throw down a Death and Decay, and then I'm just going to start spamming my Scourge Strike on the boss, except right there I'm going to grip the Wavebender. And the reason I'm gripping the Wavebender is to get as low amounts of Aqueous Burst as possible, so we have less to deal with in the Frost phase. That's kind of it's more of a quality of life thing for the raid, and it does help out the entire raid. However, it does, I guess help out our damage a little bit because it makes the fight go a little bit faster. So I did save my Cold Heart there for the ads or the egg because I do want to deal a lot of damage to the egg. And if I just throw a Cold Heart on it, then you won't get shit from your raid leader about how you're not DPSing the egg, so it's kind of a win-win. And every time those tadpoles are up, I throw up a Virulent Plague on them because there's a little bit of them and the eruption does deal AoE damage, so since there's about 6 of them stacked up, you can do a ton of damage to them. And every time the ads are about to come out, you want to throw a Virulent Plague on the Wavebender. Now, the reason you're throwing it on the Wavebender and not reapplying it to the boss is because if you throw it on the Wavebender, it's going to reapply it to the boss anyway, but it's also going to hit the other ads that are a little bit further away from the boss, like the Gladiators and the other Wavebender, because they don't get close enough to the boss to get Virulent Plague a lot of times, unless you have a Blood Decay, where they're just going to grip it in. So right there, I'm applying my Virulent Plague. As you see, it reapplied it to the boss and applied it to everything else. That's definitely a plus. I did get Driven Assault there, so I wanted to get out of the group. And we're just making sure that we keep a decent amount of stacks Festering Wound onto the boss, especially when we have our Dark Transformation up because of Black Claws doing its AoE damage. I'm going to throw up a Virulent Plague there, and then I'm going to switch to it sometimes to get my Cold Heart off. But most of the times, if I've done a decent amount of damage to it, I just don't even worry about attacking the egg. I'll just throw a Virulent Plague up there. But if you're really getting a lot of shit from your raid leader and you don't want to switch onto the egg because we have so much ramp time, just throw up a Cold Heart on it once and your damage will be good enough that your raid leader won't get on your back about that. So I'm just throwing Virulent Plague on everything, and that's really the crux of this fight, to making do with what you have with Dark Arbiter, because it doesn't have the craziest amount of AoE, but Virulent Plague itself does a decent amount of damage. So right here I'm going over to throw some damage up on that because I can't really be at the boss right now because of where we're at in the fight. So right when that ends, I'm going into the boss, I'm stacking up on the tank, and I'm going to make sure I throw my Cold Heart there right before a stack came up so I didn't waste a stack. And I'm going to start saving my runes upcoming because I want to pop my Army of the Dead because the boss is getting pretty low, and I kind of want to have my army synced up with my next Dark Arbiter phase because I'll be able to empower that and the Apocalypse with my next Dark Transformation because I use the shoulders on this fight. I use shoulders and chest, obviously. So I'm saving up my... Oh, I actually used something there. But then I used my Apocalypse, and I'm just dumping some rune power, so I did mess up there. I should have used my army before I used my Dark Transformation, so that's a fuck up on my part. But that's kind of what you want to do with your army. You want to make sure you're just not popping it willy-nilly. You kind of want to use it to both gain runic power, because it does gain a decent amount of runic power, and you also want to transform it with your other shit so you're not wasting dark transformations, and so you're getting as much use out of it as possible. So I just throw my Virulent Plague on the ads again, and right there I see an ad, I pop to it, use a Virulent Plague on it, or an Outbreak on it. So I'm just making sure that's ticking as much as possible. That's going to be your a huge percent of your damage, obviously your number 1 damage. Probably going to do about 30% of your damage on this fight just because of how many adds come up. And if you switch correctly, that's going to be a huge chunk of your damage. The Defile build does have higher DPS potential on this fight. It really does, especially if the adds are very clean. And if you have a Blood Decay, then you're definitely going to want to run that because everything's going to be stacked up very neatly. And if you have the helmet, Defile is just going to do so much damage because you're going to have it for every ad phase. If you don't have the helmet, you're not going to have Defile up for every ad phase, and it gets kind of messy and clunky, and there are going to be phases of commanding shouts where you're going to do relatively no damage. So you really don't want to run the build without the helmet, but it's still definitely possible too, especially if you have Soul of the Deathlord. If you do have Soul of the Deathlord or Kill Jaden's, you can definitely make do with it. So right here, I'll just make sure we get the egg down, and then I'm going to be throwing up my Plague over there. We have so many adds up, so I'm definitely going to throw up a Virulent Plague. I probably should have gone over there and just started cleaving, doing a lot of, Defile, Death and Decay shenanigans, and not Defile, but Death and Decay. So I'm going to throw up another Viral Plague on there because the initial damage from it is very nice when you actually have 9 adds up. So we're just going to finish off the boss here because I don't want to fall anymore because the adds are dead. I have no more cleave potential, but I'm going to try to get off a Cold Heart here. I did not get off the Cold Heart. That would have bumped me up a little bit more, but I ended up doing 1.33 mil DPS with the Defile build, and I did bonus roll the ring that I really wanted, so I was very happy and it got a stock on it. So I'm very happy about that. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful. If you did, make sure to give it a like, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one.